Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Couch Warrior podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mike, and today for UFC Vegas 77, I'm joined by my guy, Adam Newsom MMA, runs MMA 365, the Tape Index. If you guys don't know about it, make sure to check it out. It makes doing tape a lot more easy. And yeah, Newsom, Adam, thanks for coming on, brother. How are you feeling about this card?
No, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure being invited onto, podcast to break fights down, and me not having to do any post editing, which is always one of my favorite things. I can just sit back, relax, and break some fights down. And to be honest with you, like I said, in DMs, a couple of days ago, I think outside of the main event, I think it's a really fun card. I'm seeing a lot of people shit on it a little bit, but when you actually get into the fights and, you look at the matchups that we've got, I think that, honestly, we're in for a really, really fun fight night. Again, no disrespect intended outside of the main event.
Yeah, I'm with you, actually. I also, on first glance, when I was looking at the card, just all the matchups, I was like, we're going dumpster diving this week. But then I started breaking it down, and I think we've got a lot of fun matchups, a lot of violence. I'm expecting a lot of unders to hit. So I'm looking forward to talking about it. And we can hop right into the card. We've got 14 fights now, which is a lot more than I expected. I thought it was like an 11-fight card, but we've got 14 now. We've got Jack Della coming in. He was supposed to fight last week, so should be a good one. For the first fight, though, we have Tucker Lutz versus Melsik Baghdasaryan. Lutz 12-3-0. He's going to be 29 years old, 5'8" with a 72-inch reach. Melsik, on the other hand, he's 31, 7-2-0. Going to be 1 inch taller and have a 2-inch reach disadvantage. Adam, why don't you start us off, brother?
Yeah, this one actually, it's I'm quite confident in the way I think this fight's going to play out. I wasn't, from a betting perspective, I wasn't too interested, but a lot of money's come on the side that I think is going to win, and that's the Melsik Baghdasaryan side. So look, I think from a striking perspective, it's an interesting fight because I do genuinely think Tucker Lutz has got some decent boxing when he can let his hands go, and when he does decide to let his hands go and throw volume. I do feel though his last couple of fights, he's just been a little bit tentative, not really let his hands go too much. And I think Melsik Baghdasaryan's kickboxing style, again, very kick heavy. Of course, he's got hands as well, heavy hands when he actually, puts some power behind them. And I feel that the kickboxing aspect of Melsik Baghdasaryan is going to cause Tucker Lutz quite a few problems, because Lutz is going to have to get into that range through the kicking range, through the kickboxing, and exchange punches with Melsik Baghdasaryan in boxing range. But then, like I say, Baghdasaryan's boxing is good as well, so I kind of feel that the boxing is going to be relatively even. I think that Baghdasaryan probably packs that little bit more power, but then when you add the kicking dynamic, Baghdasaryan, he can look like a world-class striker again when he lets it all go. And even his last fight against Joshua Coulibaugh, I was on the side of, I bet Melsik Baghdasaryan in that fight. Felt a little bit disappointed with how it ended, with the flash submission, almost like a flash KO, but obviously a submission. But Baghdasaryan was really controlling that fight from a striking perspective. And I think Joshua Coulibaug's striking is good as well. I think it's better than Tucker Lutz. So I think if Baghdasaryan was handling Coulibaugh in the way he was, then I don't think he's going to have too many issues with Tucker Lutz. The two sticking points here, though, with Tucker Lutz is, first, I do genuinely think he's got a decent wrestling game. Again, when he decides to shoot, which he hasn't really looked like that in his last couple of fights. So I do think Tucker Lutz, again, I don't think you can knock him, though, with the Pat Sabatini fight. Sabatini was clearly just the better wrestler and grappler in that fight. But I do think Tucker Lutz has got some decent wrestling. I don't know whether he's going to use it. And if he does use it, again, he's got to close that distance and get past that kicking range, then past the boxing range to get the takedowns going. And I'm just not sure if he's going to be successful if he decides to use it. I think the one thing that Tucker could potentially try and rely on here is Baghdasaryan overworking, potentially tiring out. We've seen his volume drop over, sort of when you get halfway through the fight, definitely into the third round. But I genuinely don't think Lutz is going to put that much of a pace on in this fight that's going to force Baghdasaryan to fight with or overexert himself in regards to, managing the gas tank and the cardio. So I kind of feel that is a good stylistic matchup for Baghdasaryan, and I would be a little bit surprised to see him lose, because I do think he's just genuinely better where the fight's going to be won and lost, which I believe is going to be in the striking. So yeah, my pick's Melsik Baghdasaryan for this fight. And like I said, interesting to see that the line coming down on Baghdasaryan. And if it keeps coming down, I might take a real closer look into, pulling the trigger in regards to some action. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm actually on the same side, and I'm a big dummy. I played Melsik because I thought that the line was going to keep coming in on him. I played him at minus 220. He's now minus 150, and I feel like a big old idiot. But I've got 2 units on him, and I really do think he's going to win this fight. I think that Lutz has to wrestle if he's going to win. I don't think he can stand with Melsik. He's an okay boxer, but he kind of works in these flurries and not too much coming down the pipe, usually a little bit loopy with the strikes. And I just think Melsik is a much, much better striker. I think he's got the kickboxing, like you mentioned. Those kicks, I think, are going to make a difference as well. You don't really see a lot of kicks coming from Tucker Lutz. He's a little one-dimensional in that way. But Melsik, he's got the kicks, he's got the hands, he's got great power. And oftentimes, guys with power like that, we think their cardio is not very good. They can't keep going. They can't keep that kind of power in the third round. And that's not really the case with Melsik. He's good in the third round, maybe a little bit slower, but he's still got that output. And in terms of his takedown defense, because like I said, I think if Lutz is going to win, he's going to have to wrestle. And I think his wrestling's okay, but I don't think it's anything too special. And Melsik, we've seen him have pretty good takedown defense. I'm pretty sure it was Bruno Souza or Silva, I forget the name. He went like 0-4. When he fought Dennis Bazooka on the Contender Series, Bazooka went like 2-6, something like that, 2-8. And I know people people say Bazooka's not very good, not like UFC caliber. I strongly disagree. The dude's pretty good, and I do think he's going to get signed soon. Since that Melsik fight, he's won 7 in a row and hasn't lost a single one. So I wouldn't say like just because he defended those takedowns and Bazooka's not in the UFC, like it doesn't mean much. I think his takedown defense is pretty good. And if Lutz does get him down, I don't see Lutz like being able to hold him down much. I don't see him doing a lot of damage on the ground. And we know now with the judging we have that just holding someone down might not win you the fight. If the person from bottom's throwing up more, they might win the round. So can't really bank on that. And I just don't think it's the move. Like if you got Lutz earlier at like plus 180, whatever, okay, you probably made a good bet. But at this point at plus 130 with Melsik at minus 150, I think Melsik is the side for sure. So I got 2 units down on him, and I'm probably just going to keep it with that at this point. But we can move on to our next fight. This one I'm really hyped for. We've got Austin Lingo versus Melquizael Costa. Lingo 9-2-0. He's 29 years old, 5'10" with a 70-inch reach. He's a 4-7 MMA guy as far as I know right now. Costa 19-6-0. He's going to be 3 years younger, same height, 3-inch reach advantage. And he's training at a shoot box, but it is a different shoot box than Charles Oliveira and those guys. But the style seems to be similar. I'll start us off here. I really like Costa. I never really thought highly of Lingo. I'll be completely honest. When he got brought in to fight Zalal, I didn't even think he was going to come back. And then he fought, what was his name? Jacob Kilburn, who I also don't think is UFC caliber. He's no longer in the UFC. So, like, he won that fight good, but I don't put much into it. The Saldana fight, all right, that's better. I think Saldana was okay. He just has horrible, horrible fight IQ. And then the Nate Landwehr fight, like, he looked good in the beginning. His boxing is good. But, again, he's pretty one-dimensional in the striking. It's just boxing. You almost never see kicks coming from Lingo. He's got good pressure, and he's pretty good at cutting off the cage, making it hard to move away. But he slows down, and he does have the power. I like his power a lot, and I like his body shots. But he slows down, and he's not really throwing too many things straight. So Costa, he is throwing straight. He's throwing down the pipe. I think he's going to land faster. I think he's going to land more often. And while I do think Lingo maybe has more power, I think the strikes from Costa might look more effective, might do more damage, just because I think his striking is a bit better. And the big thing for me here is if Costa's uncomfortable on the feet, if Lingo is coming in with this really good output, Costa's feeling the power, Lingo's going to the body, I think Costa could easily just go to his grappling. He's got good wrestling. He's got really good jiu-jitsu. I think he's got like 6 submission wins on his record, something like that. We just saw Landwehr submit Lingo, and I think the BJJ of Costa is much, much better than Nate Landwehr's. So I think he has that path open for him too. And on the feet, like I mentioned earlier, I think he'll be better there as well. But if he's not, he has that grappling. So I played Costa actually like an hour ago at minus 200. I put 2 units on it. I think it's a good spot. And I'll be looking out for his sub prop. It's plus 375 now on Bet Online. But I have a feeling we might get something better. So I'm going to hold out on that one. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, look, listen, I agree with you as well in regards to the outcome. And look, I love these new era explosive Brazilian fighters. We know what I'm talking about. The Daniel Willicat Santos. We're talking about Alan Nascimento. We're talking about Gabriel Santos. We're talking, the list goes on. The Joe Anderson Brito, another one as well. And I think Melsik Costa fits that bill. I do think he's at the lower end of those fighters that I've mentioned, though, for sure. But again, I'm kind of open-minded to Melsik Costa because I didn't really get the best read on him outside of the UFC. And yeah, like I say, my mind is still a little bit open to him, rising up on the list of the fighters that I've mentioned. But in regards to this matchup, I do think that he's got more ways to win, more paths to victory. So I do agree. I think the striking is, if this is a 15-minute kickboxing fight, I think Costa absolutely can win the fight. I think if he's mixing things up, he's the more likely fighter to mix things up, the more likely fighter to engage in the wrestling. And if he can get Lingo on his back, I definitely think that's a path to victory as well. The only thing that worries me coming back from Lingo's side is, like you mentioned, Mike, he's got power, but he's also got that dog in him as well. Like, he can take a beating. And he's one of these fighters that is like that Homer Simpson type of fighter where he'll take a beating until you're worn out and then he'll start coming back. And even that, like you mentioned, that Luis Saldana fight, I think I bet Saldana in that fight as well. And, obviously Saldana was looking good until he wasn't. And again, that's pretty typical of a Luis Saldana performance. But yeah, look, I think Costa's got the tools to win this fight. I think that the line is probably about right and where I would imagine it. Maybe if I'm being a little bit skeptical, maybe a little bit too wide, but it's in and around where it should be. And I do think he's rightfully favored. It's just like I say, the power coming from Lingo, the dog in him, and that gritty, grindy style is, again, it's one of those where you just can't really count him out until he is out, or until the final bell's rung and you're confident that Costa's got at least, or his opponent has got at least 2 out of the 3 rounds. So yeah, look, I do think Lingo, if I'm watching the fight and Lingo wins, I'm not going to be overly shocked. But at the same time, I do think the rightful favourite's Costa, who's got more paths to victory, more ways to win the fight. And I do believe has got a higher ceiling and will probably win more fights in the UFC after this fight than Lingo. So yeah, I've got some concerns on Lingo's side, but like I say, I think the line's right, and my pick's Melsik Costa to win as well.
All right. So far, just agreement from us. Hopefully we'll disagree soon. Always way more fun. But next up, we've got a prospect I'm really excited about. We have Istela Nunes versus Viktoriya Dudakova. Nunes 6'4" She's 30 years old, 5'4" with a 66-inch reach. American top team for her. Dudakova 6'0". She's 24, 5'5". She's 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach advantage for her, and she's training out of Extreme Couture right now. Why don't you start us off, Adam?
Yeah, look, I think that first and foremost, I think the line is a very, very risky line, and the reason I say this is, these 2 fighters have got complete opposite styles. Nunes is going to want to keep this fight stood up, but not only stood up at range as well, at kicking range, where she's not risking getting the distance closed and obviously taken down. And then from Dudakova's side, like, she definitely wants to close the distance, get a hold of Nunes and take her down. That's what a game is. My concern here is, look, Dudakova has looked very dominant. She's definitely got a style that, for those people that have followed me for the years that I've been doing this is my preferred style in MMA. And, when it comes to betting as well, a fighter that all they want to do is close the distance, get you down to the mat and smother you on top, not give you any breathing room, not allow you back up to your feet. I think stylistically, Nunes is going to have a lot of problems in this fight, because I don't foresee Dudakova not being able to close that distance and take her down. My worrying concern is the amount of times, especially in women's MMA, We've seen a debutant at -400 who's been an absolute beast outside of the UFC, who's got that super obvious path to victory. And you're thinking, it doesn't matter what competition she fought outside the UFC. The style's so good, and it's so good against her opponent's style as well. The strengths outweigh the weaknesses, but then they go out there and somehow I managed to lose the fight. So, you've been watching the sport for years, Mike, and those listening probably have as well. And the amount of times we've seen this, and it's not just with women's MMA, we've seen it with men's MMA as well. And it's just something in the back of my mind thinking, at -400, or at least that was the line the last time I checked. Something in my gut is saying that is extremely risky. But look, if you're wanting to just play this for a little bit of fun and throw it in like a 7, 8, 9, 10 leg parlay or whatever, then it's obviously going to be a good parlay piece. But yeah, look, I think Dudakova is going to dominate. I think she's going to get the takedown, spend that top control time. I think Nunes is going to be out of a depth on her back, and I don't think she's going to be able to get back up, or at least very easily or very often. But like I say, there's just something on that line that's screaming something is going to happen that surprises us, just because it's, we've read this script before, but the pick is Dudakova. And again, we've got to go off what we see and not the gut and the assumptions and, previous fights that have got nothing to do with this fight. So yeah, from that perspective, I have to pick Dudakova. But yeah, we've read this script before.
Yeah, so I didn't even realize she opened that wide. She opened up at -550. She's -204 now, which is
okay.
Probably much, much better. But yeah, I don't want to bet her as a favorite either. So I'm probably staying off in terms of a money line side. But
I mean, sorry to cut you in, Mike. There is a really big difference between -200 and -400 in this spot. At -200, it's definitely more, I can see that more for sure. At -400, it was just like, yeah, it's something that, you wouldn't want to touch.
Yeah, definitely a big difference. But for me, it's still a little bit too much, just because I haven't seen her tested against a really good striker. And I think that Nunes is a really good striker. I like her striking a lot. Really, like, she uses her length well. Nice combinations, everything straight, good output, power is there. Her cardio is a bit of a problem. Slows down pretty much every single fight, which I think is going to be relevant here. Her takedown defense, in my opinion, isn't that great. She does move a lot laterally, which might make it a little bit difficult for Dudakova to close the distance. But overall, I think Dudakova's wrestling is so good. She's got a Sambo background. Going into her Contender Series fight, she was like a +250 underdog. I played her. I had no idea she was injured going into that fight. And then the injury started to flare up. It was her left knee. And the doctors even came in the third round. They were like checking her walking, and they just let her continue. And with that knee injury, she still dominated. She took her down every round. She was on top for the most part. She made a few mistakes and got reversed, but for the most part, she was very dominant. I really like her ground game. I really like the wrestling. Her striking definitely needs some work, and she's pretty hittable on the feet, but the beauty of it is she's not leaving fights on the feet for very long. So as long as she's able to stop Nunes from moving nonstop laterally, I think she'll have a lot of success, and I think she's probably going to grind out a decision. The way I'm looking at it, though, is I'm considering a sub, Dudakova by sub. It's +250, or was +250 on Bet Online. Not sure what other books are going to give, but that's probably the way I'll look at it, because I think she's very live for submission. 4 of her wins are by sub. We've seen Nunes submitted already, and I don't like the ground game of Nunes very much. So as long as Dudakova can get her down, I think she's got this fight pretty easily. So it's Dudakova for me. I don't think I can get to a money line, though, at -200 just yet. I'm going to need to see a bit more from her. We can move on real quick. Let me catch up with the chat. A bunch of comments out of nowhere. What's up, Rob? Thanks for tuning in. Popeyes, Carnelosi took her down 5 times. That's fair, but Carnelosi's a walking refrigerator. The woman is freaking jacked. So, like, I love Dudakova, and she's got definitely better wrestling than Carnelosi, but she doesn't have that physicality. That's just a fact. Line is Madness was all over Duda as a big dog, but come on, not a top prospect. Hey, I think she's a top prospect, but yeah, she shouldn't be playing her at these odds just yet. Glenn Bott, thanks for tuning in, brother. Let's see what else we got going here. Hasbullah Magomedov, she's a scrub when she lost to Hughes. She lost to Hughes because she got exhausted. But yeah, definitely wasn't a good look. Card of the year. Let's go. Maybe. But we're going to be hard
outside of the main event.
Going to be hard to beat the last event. And her contender series fight against Silva was definitely a tougher opponent. That's interesting. I don't know about that. Silva is pretty good. It's not like she beat a bum on the contender series. Maria Silva was 8-0, and she does have a win since that fight. But Nunes is pretty good. I think she's a little bit underrated just because of how she's looked in the UFC. But that's what we got to work with, right? Well, we can move on. This fight is going to be a lot of violence. We've got Genaro Valdez versus Evan Elder. Valdez 10-2-0. He's 31 years old, 5'9" with a 72-inch reach and trim gym for him. Elder 7-2-0. He's going to be 5 years younger at 26, 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach disadvantage. Kill Cliff FC for him. I'll start us off here. So Evan Elder, man, I'm a huge fan, and I bet him in that Sadykhov fight. I bet him at like plus 220, something like that. I was so damn happy with myself going into the third round. And then he gets the cut or whatever, doctor stoppage. And then the most painful part was when the scorecards came out and all three judges had Evan Elder up 2018, two rounds to none. And I was just like, God damn it, man. But the dude is good. I think he's very solid. I think he's got a future here. Is he going to be top 10? I don't know, but he's got good wrestling. He's got good striking. He's got good takedown defense. Biggest problem with him for me is the striking defense. He does get hit a lot, and he's very hittable. We've got the same problem with his opponent, Valdez, also extremely hittable. We saw in his contender series fight against Patrick White, an Alaska FC guy. He almost got knocked out by Patrick like 2 or 3 times, and he was a minus 900 favorite. And then in the second round, he got his own knockout and got the contract. I think that Valdez is definitely being overlooked a little bit here. I think the line is off. I actually played Valdez for a half unit at plus 279. It's like plus 275 now. I think it's a bit too wide, and I just think it's recency bias because we saw Valdez lose to Levy. A lot of people don't like Levy very much as a fighter. We saw Evan Elder against Sadykhov in a fight that everybody thought he was winning. He was winning. So I think it's a little bit of recency bias. Valdez is a pretty good striker. I like his striking. He's got good power. The technique is there. Like I said, the problem is just he's also very hittable. He can wrestle. Is his wrestling going to work against Evan Elder? I'm not quite sure. We're going to have to see. Sadykhov got a takedown on Elder. Parsons obviously dominated him on the ground. That was at 170, and Elder was on short notice there. I think it's going to be a really sloppy, greasy fight. And because of that, I don't think anybody here should be minus 280, minus 300. I do think Evan Elder is a rightful favorite. I just think the line is off, and I do think that Valdez is live. I think he can pull it off with a knockout. Depending how the wrestling goes, maybe a decision. I don't think that's too likely, though. I'm not sure what Valdez decision no action is. That might be a decent way to look at it, because if we go to a decision, I do think it's more than likely Evan Elder winning this one, but we'll have to see. I like my dog shot here at plus 275, 279. I think it's closer than that, and that's it for me. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, so listen, I definitely agree with the line. I don't think that a fighter at this level against another fighter also at this level and the same level as the opponent should be anywhere close to minus 300. So I definitely think the line's off for sure. However, I do think Elder wins the fight. Like, look, Genaro Valdez, I feel has got, or he's going to be very live very early in this fight. I think he's going to come forward, hell on wheels, 100 miles an hour, big shots. I think he's going to try and get Elder out of there. Elder does seem to be the type of fighter that will accept the fact that he is going to be less aggressive in this fight. His opponent's more aggressive. His opponent's forward pressure's going to be more solid, and the opponent's power is going to be there as well. And I think he's the type of fighter to kind of accept that. So I think there's a storm that's going to have to be weathered. But the thing is, if Valdez is to win this fight, I do think it's going to be via a certain method of victory in regards to it being a finish. And I do think it's going to have to be under 1.5 rounds if he's going to do it. Otherwise, I just don't see him doing it. So I think that the path to victory is so small. Well, I wouldn't say small, but it's so specific for Valdez. But the window of opportunity is also going to be small because he's going to have to do it within a certain time frame. And I just think that Again, Elder, he's got the dog in him. He's got the ability to take shots and, retreat. And if things start getting a little bit hectic, he'll probably just shoot a panic takedown, not get it, but that's fine because he's just, breaking that flow of Valdez, just stopping that aggression, just giving himself a couple of seconds breather before it all comes on him again. And I think eventually, look, Valdez has got some crazy power, and he's got some good finishes. But at this level in the UFC, the finishes do tend to be a little bit few and far between compared to what you've done outside of the UFC. And when you start to fight UFC caliber fighters, which I think Evan Elder is, to be fair to him, the finishes start to become a little bit tougher. And like I say, I do think that Elder toughs out the early moments in this fight, and I do think he starts getting the wrestling going. And we've seen Valdez taken down, we've seen him controlled, and we've also seen him get back up as well. But I really like Elder's jiu-jitsu, because he was put in so many bad spots against Parsons as an example, and he was able to reverse sweep, get out of those positions. Sure, he was re-swept, but Parsons is a good grappler, and the weight class, I think Elder came in as a short notice debutant in that fight, upper weight class. So the fact that he achieved what he did in regards to the sweeps and reversals when he was clearly tired and worn out as well. So I just think that what I'm trying to say is, look, Elder's got a good ability with the wrestling. And like you said, he was 2 rounds up on every single judge's scorecards against Sadykhov, who I think Sadykhov's a better striker than Valdez. I think that's probably a harder fight for Elder as well. We know that MMA math, it doesn't always check out, but I do think that there's a storm to be weathered. Valdez knocks him out early, I'm not going to be shocked, and I don't think anyone else should be either. But I do think Elder dogs it out, takes it down the stretch, and really starts to wear Valdez out. And the longer the fight goes on, the better Elder looks. But again, coming back from a betting perspective, should Elder be minus 300? No, I definitely don't think so. I think if Elder was around minus 175, minus 180, then I think that's more of a true line, maybe close to minus 200. But minus 300 is too wide. But I do think he wins the fight. I think that these fighters with the quick finishes, with the small window of opportunity, eventually that starts drying out until they start being able to point fight over 3 rounds effectively. And I'm just not sure Valdez is there yet. So the pick's Evan Elder to win.
All right. First disagreement, kind of, and we'll move on to our next fight. We've got Carl Deaton III versus Alex Munoz. Deaton III, he is 17-6-0, 33 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach, training out of, it says American Top Team here. I don't think he's there anymore. Munoz on the other side, 6'2-0, also 33, 2 inches taller. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's training out of Team Alpha Male. Why don't you start us off, Adam?
Yeah, look, I think it's if you're playing this fight, play it with caution. With Munoz, he's had a couple of years out. I wasn't sure why he'd been out. He was one of those fighters, at least for me, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, that I'd sort of forgot about. And then when he came back, I was like, oh, shit, that's Alexander Munoz. But look, it sounds like he's been dealing with injury. The one thing, though, and I said this on my podcast as well, you cannot, I cannot understate this anymore, is even though he's been out with injury, he's still been coaching at Team Alpha Male. So not only is he coaching at a good gym, but the one thing that your general public won't be aware of is how much your skills can improve and develop just via teaching and coaching. I own my own MMA gym. I coach MMA myself. And, from my perspective, some of my disciplines within MMA have grown so much since I've started coaching, just because you are teaching, the minute details, the step by step. You can't go from just standing up to a double leg takedown and not know the correct steps between it, or you can't escape a submission or hit a sweep without knowing the correct steps to set that up. And teaching that sort of stuff, honestly, the intelligence in your game will have absolutely improved. So although Munoz has been out, the fact that he's been coaching, it doesn't worry me as much that he's been out injured. But back to this stylistic matchup, I do think that Munoz needs to get takedowns to win this fight. I think that Carl Deaton, again, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times already, and we're not far into the breaking down the fights, but Deaton's got that dog in him. He's got that forward pressure. If it means eating 2 punches to land 3, he's happy doing that. I think from a striking perspective, I'm not saying Deaton's the better striker, but I think he will land more volume on the feet just because of that forward pressure, just because of the aggression, cutting off the angles and genuinely just throwing more shots and it being a numbers game. But then when you start mixing the wrestling in, I do think Munoz is a decent wrestler and get the fight down to the mat. I think, which I don't anticipate there is going to be, if it goes to the scorecards, we're going to be looking at, in my opinion, a fighter with more volume versus the fighter that's scored the takedowns, that's broken the flow of the fight up, that's scored 30 seconds, 60 seconds of top control time before the fight stands back up and then he gets another takedown. How are the judges going to score that in regards to it being effective? You know, there's a difference between scoring 3 lots of 30-second takedowns to, you know, scoring a takedown and spending an entire minute and a half on top of somebody. So I think it's going to be, if it goes to the scorecards, it could be a very sketchy decision unless Munoz is just more dominant with the wrestling and can hold him down for long periods of time. And I'm leaning towards Munoz because of that, because I feel that if any fighter is really going to take a, you know, put a stamp on this fight and really solidify something on the scorecards, it's more likely to be Munoz with the wrestling than it is Deaton really lighting Munoz up on the feet, which again, I feel like the wrestling is more likely to be dominant than the striking of Deaton. So yeah, I'm picking Munoz to win the fight, but it could be one of those close decisions should it go to the scorecards.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Munoz wins, and I honestly don't think it's going to be that close. It could be, I guess, if, you know, he looks really off. He's got ring rust. He's been out since 2021. But like you said, he's been in the gym still this whole time. So I think that's good. I think his striking is pretty good. Maybe, like, I can't even say personally that Deaton's a better striker. I don't necessarily think so. I think it's kind of close. But the gap in the grappling for me is very wide. I think that Munoz will have that wrestling all day. I like his wrestling a lot. I think he's got a good ground game. And I think once he takes Deaton down, it's going to be hard for Deaton to get back up. So I think he's just going to grind him out for 3 rounds. Personally, that's how I see it playing out. If it's stuck on the feet, yeah, I'll be a little bit worried because I got 2 units down on Munoz. So I'll be a little worried. But I think his striking is good enough. I think that the gap in the grappling is much wider than any possible gap in the striking. So at minus 145, I threw a unit on him. And then at minus 158, I added another unit. So I've got 2 units down on him now to win just over 1. And yeah, I like that spot quite a bit. I'm fairly comfortable with it. I don't think Deaton's really that great. I mean, anybody in the UFC has to be pretty good, but I just don't think he's that good. So it's Munoz for me as well. We can move on to our next one. Here we've got Tyson Nam versus Azat Maksum making his debut. Nam is 21-13-1, 39 years old, 5'7" with a 68-inch reach. Maksum on the other side, 16-0, undefeated, 11 years younger at 28. I don't have his reach, but I do know he's 5'8", so he's 1 inch taller. I'll start us off. I think Maksum should win. He looks really good on the regionals. The opponent's not the best in the world, so it's hard to really tell. The competition edge for me, it's clearly Nam here. But I do think that Maksum should win this. I mean, his grappling is really good. The wrestling is fantastic. Nam does have 100% takedown defense in the UFC, but that's 4 takedowns defended against, let me double check. It was 4 takedowns defended against Kai Kara France, and he defended 1 takedown against Bruno Silva. So it hasn't really been tested, and it certainly hasn't been tested against a guy like Maksum, who's, in my eyes, a very good wrestler. And I think Maksum's a good striker, too. I like his combinations. I like what he's doing on the feet. The output is pretty good. 5 knockout wins. And the best part of the striking is I think it's solid to set up his wrestling. And the timing on the takedowns, it's so good. Whereas Nam, my problem with Nam has always been the same. To me, he's like a flyweight Derek Lewis. He just doesn't throw enough, always waiting for the counter. He'll pressure forward, but he's not going to lead the exchanges. He's going to wait for you to start it and then look for a big counter. He's got crazy power, definitely shows. I mean, he's got 13 knockout wins. The counters work, but I just don't like betting on guys, even at plus 300, who don't really throw much, who are always looking for the counter, won't lead exchanges, and he doesn't have any grappling upside in my eyes. So I think Maksum dominates. Do I want to bet him at minus 400? No, I don't. No interest there. But what I did play, which I actually really like, is I played the under 2.5 at minus 110. I put a unit on it, and I like that spot a lot. I think there's finishing upside on both guys. I think Nam could get a knockout. His counters are good, and his power is definitely there, especially for flyweight. And Maksum, he could be a little bit hittable. He can overextend a little bit. Still relatively green, I would say, at the higher level. So I do think Nam can knock him out. And I think Maksum can possibly knock him out or sub him also. So I really like that under, and that's how I chose to tackle this. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I think this is a terrible fight for Tyson Nam, if I'm being honest. Look, the first thing that I noticed with Maksum is he has probably the fastest entry into a takedown that I've ever seen in MMA. And I know, obviously, you know, these guys are lighter guys, but still, like, I mean, you mentioned the timing, Mike, but the speed on the double leg is just unreal, to the point where, you know, when he's shooting the takedown, he's not even needing to cut the corner to complete the double leg, just because he shoots and gets to the hips and lifts that quick that his opponent just doesn't even have time to react, to the point where Maksum doesn't need to expend any further energy cutting a corner and completing the takedown. And the thing is, Maksum is absolutely just going to go in there and shoot takedowns. I don't think he's going to try and strike with Tyson Nam. I don't think he needs to. I think for Nam to win this fight, it's going to have to be like just timing one of those takedowns and hitting like a knee or an uppercut or something down the middle. But again, going back to the speed of the entry from Maksum, I just think it's going to be almost impossible to time a strike unless you just guess. I think you'd literally just have to, he's just going to have to guess, maybe just throw like an uppercut or a knee and just expect it to just hit thin air and just hope that when he throws it, it's just at that time where the fast takedown's coming in. Yeah, I think it's tough. I don't see a fight here where Maksum doesn't get takedowns and doesn't get plenty of them. And like you said with Tyson Nam, I don't think he throws enough to really prevent the takedowns or make Maksum hesitant. Excuse me, or to make Maksum hesitant to shoot in, because again, that can be a first line of takedown defense. You know, if you've got good boxing, good combinations, and good power, and you're throwing and keeping your opponent at the end of your punches, it's going to be very difficult for them to shoot a takedown. And also that forward pressure as well is difficult for the wrestler to shoot moving backwards. But again, it's elements of Tyson Nam's game that I just don't think that we're going to see, because we don't see it. So yeah, look, I think that the line is probably about right from what I've seen. I would be very surprised if Tyson Nam won the fight, just because, like I say, I think Maksum's takedowns are just so quick, so well timed, and I just don't think he's going to fuck around trying to strike. I think he's just going to go in there, close the distance, take him down, and then once he hits 2 or 3 takedowns, the volume of Tyson Nam, which we know is already low, I think will be even lower due to hesitancy. So yeah, the pick for me is Azat Maksum as well.
All right, sounds good, and we can move on. Next fight up, we've got Ashlee Evans-Smith versus Ailin Perez. What a shit show of a fight. Smith, 6'5" 36 years old, 5'8" with a 67-inch reach. Perez on the other side, she's 7'2" 8 years younger at 28, 3 inches shorter, and she's got a 1-inch reach disadvantage. Why don't you start us off, Adam?
Yeah, thanks for letting me start this one off.
Best fight on the card.
Look, I think I tweeted. Oh no, I didn't tweet. It was my podcast, I think, and I said, look, I don't know where Ashlee Evans-Smith has been. Somebody mentioned on the comments to that she had some sort of PED suspension, PED suspension. Seemed like she was doing pretty good on, you know, OnlyFans and Instagram to me. But yeah, look, in regards to this fight, I think it's difficult to know what we're going to get from Ashlee Evans-Smith. If it's the Evans-Smith that we saw, you know, last time out, well, for a start, she hasn't won a fight in the UFC or won a fight in general since 2018, and that was Beck Rawlins, who, again, you know, that's a name that is long gone as well. So it's really difficult to try and pick her to win this fight and to try and justify it. So look, I'm not going to spend too long on it. I think Ailin Perez, I think her striking at least matches Ashlee Evans-Smith's striking, probably a bit better. But then the wrestling and grappling, I think whoever does get on top is probably going to have the more success with their opponent on bottom. But I kind of think that Ailin Perez is the fighter that's going to be the one more willing to engage in the wrestling and will successfully wrestle and therefore probably have a better time on top. And yeah, look, unless there's a version of Ashlee Evans-Smith that's been improving and developing over the last couple of years, that is almost impossible as analysts to make that assumption that we're going to see that. And if we do make that assumption, it's how good has she got? You know, like I said, it's an impossible scenario to predict. Based on what we know, I'm picking Ailin Perez.
Yeah, I have to be on the same side. I couldn't believe the line when it opened. She was like minus 350 or something like that, which is insane for a woman like Ailin Perez. Like, that's just nuts, even against Ashlee Evans-Smith. Now she's like minus 160, 70. I played her at minus 150. I slapped a unit on her. I just think right now at this moment in time, she's going to be the better fighter. She's a little sloppy on the feet. I don't know who I'd give the striking to. I'd say it's probably pretty close. I think that Perez, though, she's going to have the better power right now. And, you know, Smith actually comes from a wrestling background, All-American, all that. But I think that Perez is going to be the one getting takedowns here, personally. Maybe she gets taken down a few times, but I do think she'll get back up if that happens. I think she'll get her own takedowns. And I kind of see her stopping Smith at some point, maybe hurting her on the feet, getting a takedown, ground and pound, something like that. So I actually played her knockout prop also at plus 600 for 0.2 to win 1.2 units. I think that's a decent spot. I don't know where Ashlee Evans-Smith is going to be right now, but if it's anything like where she was before she went out for whatever it was, 3 years now, I don't think she's going to win here. I think Perez got it, but I wouldn't go too crazy on Perez. She's not anything special in my eyes. I don't think she's a prospect by any means. And I'm seeing people with like 3-4 units on Perez, parlaying Perez. I think that's a little bit crazy. Like we see WMMA upsets pretty much every single week, and this could definitely be one. I do think it's Perez winning, and I do think she's going to get a finish, but I think it's crazy to put too much on this fight.
And we don't know if Ashlee Evans-Smith's been hitting pads for her OnlyFans subscribers. So look, if anyone is spending that, you know, $9.99 or whatever it is, you know, I'm sure they can let us know in the comments if she's been hitting pads on OnlyFans. But, you know, outside of that, yeah, I think it's tough. It's tough to pick her to win this fight.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But all right, we can move on to our next one. Here we've got Della Maddalena coming in against Bassil Hafez, who's coming in on short notice. Jack is 14-2-0, 26 years old, 5'11" with a 73-inch reach. Hafez, 8-3-1, 31. He's 5 years older, same height, don't have his reach on me. So I'll start us off here. The first thing is I'm kind of concerned with Jack is he's cutting weight twice. He literally cut weight last week, and now he's cutting weight again. So maybe that might affect his chin, the cardio. I don't know. I think he has Hafez covered pretty much everywhere, but I do think Hafez is kind of live. I definitely think he's better than Harrell, who was Jack's original opponent last week. And I think that his striking is pretty good. Is it on the level of Jack's? No, I think Jack is much cleaner. Jack goes to the body really nice. But I do think that Hafez also has pretty good striking. And I actually like the wrestling of Hafez a lot. I think his wrestling is really solid. He's a BJJ black belt. He's got good jiu-jitsu. And I could see him getting a few takedowns here. Can he hold down Jack? Probably not. Jack scrambles so well. When he got taken down by Angelusa, the way he scrambled out was really clean. I think he's going to be really difficult to hold down. And as much as I want to take a shot on the big dog, Hafez, it's like plus 450 on him. I don't think he's going to pull it off. The one spot I am considering is the over 1.5, or maybe fight starts round 2 once it comes out. The over 1.5 is plus 165 right now. I think that Hafez is tough enough where he could survive. I don't necessarily see Jack knocking him out like really quickly. I think that Hafez will shoot relatively early. And if he can get those takedowns, maybe it'll stretch out the rounds. So if I can get some kind of plus money for fight starts round 2, I'll probably put some money there. But how about you, Adam?
Yeah, listen, I don't really see it for Hafez at all. I think that Della Maddalena, in regards to the weight cutting as well, because it's something you mentioned, I'm not as concerned about that because I don't think, and again, this is me just looking at body type and, you know, sort of being around the sport a little bit. I don't think he has that big of a weight cut. And also the other thing is as well, the weight cut is, from like fight week perspective, it starts with the water loading, and then it ends with on, the Thursday night and, the Friday morning, that's when you really take the big chunk of weight off. So I don't think with the fight cancellation, it's actually happened after that big chunk of weight that is pushed to come off. So I don't expect the weight cut to be a factor. And I just feel like I said it early on with with another, I think it was the Tyson Nam fight now, that look, when a fighter's that good with the speed, the boxing and the power, and they're the ones that's really enabling themselves to move forward because of the sharpness with the striking, it's very difficult for a fighter to get the wrestling going and get takedowns. And I kind of feel that's going to play a factor in this fight, because whilst Maddalena's putting combinations together, going to the body, to the head, and finishing off with kicks and just really putting good combinations together and lighting him up on the feet, I just don't see him being able to get that wrestling going, at least not easily. And if he does get the wrestling going, I think, Jack Della can, sprawl. And if he is taken down, I think he can get back up. I think he dealt with a better wrestler in Amiv, and he survived those moments against him, got the fight back on the feet as well. So I'm just not really seeing it, if I'm being honest. I think the striking of Jack Della Maddalena is just going to be too clean, too crisp. I definitely think he's got deceptive one-punch power as well. We've seen that on a couple of occasions already. So, yeah, I feel that if he is going to lose this fight, or if he is going to lose a fight in the UFC, it's probably going to be via the wrestling and, a good top-side grappler. But also it has to be a wrestler that's A, got good enough wrestling to be able to take him down at will, and B, got good enough cardio to be able to consistently take him down, to really break that morale. Because once Jack Della Maddalena's got up 2 or 3 times, and then the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th takedown comes, I think that's the fighter that's going to break Maddalena. And I just don't see that here. I think, I think he's going to win fights in the UFC for sure. But for me, the pick, I can't go against Jack Della Maddalena in this fight. And I do think that he will finish the fight as well.
All right. Makes sense to me. And we can move on to our next one. This is going to be violent. We've got Terrance McKinney versus Nazim Sadykhov. McKinney, 13-5-0, 28 years old, 5'10" with a 73-inch reach. He's out of Warrior Camp MMA, trains with our guys Sadykhov, Kakramanov. Nazim Sadykhov, 8-1-0, 29 years old. He's 1 year older, same height. It's going to be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage, training out of Longo Weidman MMA. Why don't you start us off, Newsom?
Yeah, look, I think the elephant in the room is Terrance McKinney and his cardio, or, well, cardio crossed with the pacing as well. And it all depends what Terrance McKinney we get, because look, if he does come out fast and hard here, I think he can absolutely finish Sadykhov. I think he can knock him out like he has done with multiple fighters. And if you're knocking Frevola out with what seems to the eye, as a fan watching the sport, looks like a very straightforward 1-2 down the middle, and it starched Matt Frevola, then he's clearly got raw power. So I think if he can do that to Frevola, who is generally a durable and tough fighter, I think he can do that to most fighters in the division. And he almost did it against Drew Dober as well. But if he doesn't come out fast and hard and he reserves his cardio, then I still think he's a solid fighter, because he'll mix in his wrestling. He's got really good wrestling, a really good wrestling background, and his grappling's actually caught up to the level of his wrestling, in my opinion, from what I've seen. He's not a topside grappler where he'll rush the positions and transition before he's got a position solidified and secured. He knows what he's doing. You can see that his grappling IQ is there when he's transitioning and when he's flowing, when his opponents are moving, trying to, reverse and block transitions and things like that. So I think whichever version of Terrance McKinney we've got, I think is live. It's just, if it's the first version that he comes out fast, powerful, and he doesn't get Sadykhov out of there, then Sadykhov is absolutely the type of fighter that's going to take him long and make him pay for the mistakes that he made early in the fight. But like I say, the other side to this is Terrance McKinney just seems to be beating a certain level of fighter and seems to be struggling against a higher level competition. And look, I know Ismail Bonfim lost a couple of weeks ago to Benoit Saint Denis, but Benoit Saint Denis is a solid fighter, and I still think Ismail Bonfim's a good elite striker. And Drew Dober, of course, we know who Drew Dober is. He's a veteran and he's been in there with some of the best fighters in the world. Those are the fighters that it seems Terrance McKinney loses against. whereas your Sadykhovs, even Matt Favola, I think is a better fighter than Sadykhov. So what I'm trying to say is at this level where Sadykhov is, I don't think he's a bad fighter by any means at all, but it's just Terrance McKinney does seem to get past this level of fighter that Sadykhov is. Like I said, the concern is if McKinney comes out fast, hard, gasses, Sadykhov, I think will take over the fight, late finish or a decision. But there's every chance if Terrance McKinney comes out fast and hard, he beats him before it even that gets to weather the storm. So yeah, look, I think it's an interesting fight just because I'm really intrigued to see which version of Terrance McKinney we get. But regardless, I'm picking McKinney to win the fight.
Yeah, I'm with you again. I think McKinney's going to win this one. I was talking to Sadykhov, the guy he trains with. I know you can't take much from training partners, but he was saying McKinney is like super zoned in here. He really wants this one. So that's good to hear. And I think McKinney's just a more skilled guy. Like, yeah, the main concern is his cardio, the way he kind of just fades. And his chin may be a little bit concerning too. Doesn't seem to take shots too well. Even Ghost Pepper Gonzalez was able to hurt him in their fight. But you mentioned it. The wrestling of McKinney, I love his wrestling. I think his grappling is so good. The transitions on the ground are so clean. And if he's uncomfortable on the feet here, I think the wrestling is going to be open for sure. I think he can take down Sadykhov. I think he can submit him. But I definitely think he's going to try to strike first. Like you mentioned, the power is insane. Even hurt Drew Dober, brick for a head, not knocked out till Favola knocked him out. I cashed the ticket there. But the power is definitely there with McKinney. And it's not like he's a bad striker and he just has good power. He's also a good striker. I like the technique. Everything's nice and straight for the most part until he starts getting really wild. Really nice knees and elbows in the clinch. And Sadykhov, in my opinion, he's pretty hittable. I think he's still relatively green. He's crisp and he's a clean striker and he could definitely pick it up as the fight progresses. But I don't think he's like a Bonfim. I don't think he could, because something Bonfim did was he backed up McKinney and made it really hard for him to move by cutting off the cage. And I'm not really seeing the same from Sadykhov. I don't know if he can do that to McKinney. And I just think that McKinney's going to have that grappling open to him too. So I played McKinney earlier on at plus 134 for a half unit. And I also played his knockout at plus round one knockout at plus 800. Because, I mean, plus 800 for Terrance McKinney to get a knockout in round number one seems pretty off to me because of the way he comes out. So I like Terrance here too. Might even add to the money line. We'll see. Just a little bit hard to trust, but I just think he's the better fighter here.
Yeah, agreed.
We can move on to our next one. This fight is going to be violent without any doubt. We've got Ottman Azaitar versus Francisco Prado. Azaitar 13-1-0. He's 33 years old, 5'8" with a 71-inch reach. Prado on the other side, he's 11-1-0, 21. So he's going to be 12 years younger, super young guy. 3 inches taller at 5'11" with a 5-inch reach advantage. And he's training out of Goat Shed that's over in Florida. So I'll start us off here. I played Prado at minus 130. I put a unit on it, and I'll be looking to do something with the violence. The fight doesn't go as like minus 260. I'm thinking maybe I'll parlay that with like Maxim or something. I don't have any other parlays on this card. All the money lines are pretty close for most of them. But for me, it comes down to this. On the feet, I'm going to be like really worried the whole time because Azaitar hits really hard. He's a good fighter, good striker, goes to the body, nice combinations, and he's always live to kill a man in there. The thing is, for me, I think Prado is also a really good striker. I think Prado also has big power. He could also knock out Azaitar. And what I like about him is I think he's got a wrestling edge here. I think he can wrestle. I think that he can maybe even submit Azaitar. I like the grappling of Prado. We haven't gotten to see it in the UFC yet. But, I mean, the only fight he has in the UFC is Jamie Mullarkey on short notice, which I think we can excuse. Mullarkey's a good fighter. I know he just got knocked out by another guy on short notice, but he was winning that fight too. So because I think Prado has more ways to win, and I think he has that grappling available to him if he does start getting really uncomfortable on the feet, because Azaitar does hit like a train, I think he can use that wrestling. So I backed Prado minus 130. I just put a unit on it. A little bit concerned because of the power of Azaitar, but I think Prado wins this more often than not. How about you?
Yeah, this is turning out to be boring. As I can't believe we've agreed on every single fight so far. And again, look, I think that this was just like the Baghdasaryan line initially when, Prado opened -145, -150. I was looking at Azaitar and thinking, well, that's good plus money on Azaitar. But then now the odds are starting to shorten and we're seeing Prado at -120 and -115. I'm now thinking to myself, well, how low can this get? Because Ottman Azaitar has got the more highlight knockouts in the UFC and on the bigger stage. I think he's the more known name. So I kind of feel people are playing the plus money side on Azaitar because they absolutely know what they're going to get. And I do understand that. But the more the line comes down, the more I'm intrigued. But I am intrigued on the Prado side. And look, I understand that it's going to be a bit nervous if you're betting on this fight, either side of this fight. Look, if you bet Azaitar, you're going to be nervous of the power of Prado. And if you bet Prado, you're going to be nervous with the power of Azaitar. The one thing, though, that I feel is in the favor of, or a couple of things that are in the favor of Prado from a striking perspective, I think he's going to have a big speed advantage. I think the power is going to be relatively even on both sides. I think the first clean combination on either chin is going to be a fight ender. But also, Prado throws more. So it's a numbers game. The more you throw in longer combinations, and you've got the speed advantage as well in the exchanges, I kind of feel that Prado's very live on the feet. And then, like you said, Prado does have some decent wrestling. He's got a submission game, whereas I don't think Azaitar's got that second path to victory here. So again, I agree with you what you've said there. But I think on the feet is where it's actually going to, start, obviously, and finish. And like I say, I like the long combinations from Prado. I like the speed of Prado. He's obviously got power, which we know about as well. But he's also got that real youthful energy. And even when Jamie Malarkey was taking him down and he was getting held down, every time the fight stood back up, it would have been very easy for a UFC debutant to just, take your foot off the gas, be hesitant because you're worried about the next takedown coming in. But he wasn't. He just kept coming forward. And it was almost like he was thinking, well, fuck it. I'm here. I'm going to try and take his head off. And if he takes me down, then so be it. And I love that attitude, especially from a young fighter. Shows confidence and it shows the ability to be able to grow as well as an MMA fighter, which he will because he's very young. I'm sure he's only like 21, 22. So he will be developing from fight to fight as well. So yeah, look, right now, I'm not quite there in regards from a betting perspective, but I'm very interested to see where the line goes. If it starts getting wider again on Prado's side, I'll happily pass because it is a volatile fight. Azaitar does have nuclear bombs in his hands as well. You cannot ignore that. But I just think the speed, the volume, the long combinations, the youthful energy, as well as the power as well. Yeah, I think Prado's got a fight where he's got a good chance of winning.
All right. It is kind of crazy that we even agreed on that one. I thought maybe that's the one we'll disagree on.
To be honest with you, before I went into tape, I was very much in the mindset of I'm going to bet Azaitar at plus money. I've done it before. I did it against Karma Worthy. It seemed like I was on an absolute island with that bet. And of course, Azaitar came through. So I was before I watched tape, I was like, okay, I really like Azaitar at plus money. Prado, a little bit green, a little bit young. But again, when I watched tape and looked through it, it flipped the other way. So yeah, that's where I was at with that fight.
All right. Well, we can move on to the next one. So you're going to have to lead the charge here. This is actually the only fight I really didn't get to tape yet. We've got Norma Dumont versus Chelsea Chandler. Dumont 9-2-0, 32 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. Chandler 5-1-0. She's 29, 3 years younger. She's going to be 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach advantage for her. And she's just got that one UFC fight so far against Stoliarenko. So real quick from me, just from what I remember, because I haven't really taped this just yet. I mean, I have to think Dumont probably wins. I remember their styles being relatively similar. Dumont's very physical, more experienced at this level. I believe I liked her striking better. And I mean, if you got her at plus money, I think that was a steal. That was a great play. But at this point, I have to actually hop in and do the tape. But what are you thinking for this one?
Yeah, so one thing you mentioned, and I think this is a really interesting dynamic for this fight, and it's something I actually mentioned. I'm sure a lot of other people did as well. I'm not trying to, come across like I'm some oracle, but with Phil Rowe and Neil Magny, the one thing that I said, I bet Phil Rowe in that fight, by the way, for what it's worth. I think it was a good plus money bet considering how the fight played out. But the one thing that I said with Neil Magny is, look, Neil Magny has been the taller, longer, rangier fighter all his career, and suddenly he's fighting another fighter who was as tall, another fighter that was as long, and another fighter that had range. So the reason I mentioned that is because in this fight, the physicality. So you mentioned yourself, Norma Dumont is physical. She's big. She's strong for the division. She always looks like she has that strength, that power, and that physicality advantage. But for the first time, I believe she's going to be matched at least, or maybe bettered by Chelsea Chandler. I think Chandler is huge for the division. She's built like a brick shit house. She's got power. She's aggressive. She'll come forward. She's got that, that Nate Diaz style. Of course, obviously she trains in Stockton as well. She's got that style of, look, if you're going to hit me, that's fine, but I'm going to keep coming forward. And then when she's against the cage, like I said, she's really physical. And I'm not saying, because it's a really hard aspect of MMA to predict, watching tape, knowing who's going to be the stronger fighter, unless it's blatantly obvious. But all I'm saying is I think that Norma Dumont is going to be at least matched in this fight from the strength and power and physicality perspective. So that's going to be a new dynamic for Norma Dumont. Now, from a striking perspective, I think it's going to be close. I think Dumont's the more technical striker. Chandler's definitely not as technical, but I do think she's effective in what she does, that bulldozer type of style where she'll come forward and she'll just chuck bricks at you. And, when they land, it hurts. And then when it comes to the wrestling and the grappling, I think Dumont can be taken down. I think Chandler will look for the takedowns. And again, I think it's one of those fights. Look, if Dumont takes Chandler down, I think Chandler will struggle on bottom. But if Dumont's on bottom, I think she's going to struggle on bottom as well. I think both the offensive jiu-jitsu games for me, the woman here, is going to outweigh the defensive jiu-jitsu game. It's just, I feel with Chelsea Chandler, I think her defensive jiu-jitsu is probably going to be that little bit better than Dumont's. And I think the offensive jiu-jitsu from Chelsea Chandler is good as well. So I am leaning towards the Chelsea Chandler side here. I know she's not as experienced. I know that she's only fought, the armbar specialist or the armbar and bust, should I say, fighter in Stoliarenko in the UFC. But again, go back and watch Norma Dumont versus Carol Hosa last time out. Does that fill you with a shitload of confidence? Because the fight was pretty ugly for like 2.5 rounds until it finally picked up, in the last like half a round. So yeah, I don't think Dumont, unless Dumont's got a real strength and physicality advantage, I think she can be got at a little bit. And I think Chelsea Chandler might be able to edge that there. So yeah, I'm leaning Chelsea Chandler to win the fight. Like I say, though, the physicality battle is going to be very interesting.
All right, definitely one I got to look into, especially now that Chandler's an underdog. So might be something there. But we can move on to the next fight. We've got Walt Harris versus Josh Parisian. Harris 13-10-0, 40 years old. He's 6'5" with an 81-inch reach. Parisian 15-6-0. He's going to be 6 years younger at 34. 1 inch shorter, 2-inch reach disadvantage. I'll start us off here. I mean, at the prior line, like when it opened, I remember seeing Harris at like -2 something. Parisian was like plus 200. Then I get it. Anybody playing Parisian. But at this point, like, it's a pass for me. Maybe if money keeps coming in on Josh and Harris goes down to like, I don't know, -145, -135, he's getting close. Then I might hop in because I actually do think he's the better striker. I think he has the better power. Can his cardio hold up? I'm not exactly sure, but I also don't see him getting taken down by Parisian. So if they're on the feet, maybe Parisian's landing more, but I think that Harris is going to land much cleaner and with more power. And if anyone's going to get a knockout, I really do think it's going to be Harris. Parisian, like, to me, I don't know what to make of him. I remember his second Contender Series fight. He was fighting Chad Johnson, and I had bet on Chad because I thought both sucked. So I was like, all right, let me back this guy Chad. Looks ripped. And what happened was so weird. Chad like went for some move. I don't remember what it was. And then he just fell backwards. And then Parisian goes on top of him, ground and pound knockout. And then since then, he's had a few decent wins, I guess. He's shown that he does have good cardio, even though he's this big, heavy guy, and he does have good output. But for me, yeah, it's just such a pass. It's going to be so greasy. And do I want to back Parisian? No, I don't want to put my money on him. And do I want to bet Harris at this point in his career, at 40 years old, coming off 3 losses? No, not really. But the guys he's losing to are all much better than Parisian, like much, much better. Even Tybura, I think, would beat the shit out of Parisian. So if I can get Harris low enough, I might go with him because I do think he can knock out Josh. I think he's going to be the better striker, and I don't see him getting taken down or anything like that. So I'll pick Harris right now, no bet. We'll see what happens with the line. How about you?
Yeah, I've got a max bet on Parisian. I'm joking. I haven't got a max bet on Parisian.
I was waiting for that.
No, we're agreeing again. Unfortunately, no. Look, I don't understand. I don't understand why the money's coming on Parisian. To be honest, I really don't. I think even if you bet him at the best plus money line, I still think it's a bit of a stretch. Look, if he comes out here and wins at this level as a UFC heavyweight, sorry, excuse. I don't want to kill anyone's ears with that cough. But no, look, if he comes out there at this level as a UFC heavyweight, I'm not going to be overly shocked, but I just think Walt Harris is going to be, like you said, the better striker. I think he's going to be faster. I think he's going to be more explosive. The age thing really doesn't concern me at all. We haven't really seen him slow down in decline or anything. And yeah, like you've said already, he's coming off 3 losses, but Alistair Overeem at the time, he nearly had Overeem as well. And if you remember, that was the fight, his first fight back after, the tragedy with his daughter. So he nearly had Overeem. And I remember he threw a head kick. And if that head kick had landed, it would have been over. But Overeem sort of caught it on the shoulder a little bit and took him down. And then that was the changing point for the fight. So he nearly had Overeem. Next fight, Volkov. Volkov would absolutely crush Parisian. Next fight, Tybura. Tybura would absolutely crush Parisian as well. So the guys, again, I said it with Terrance McKinney, the guys that Harris loses to, his opponent would absolutely lose to as well. But he beats a certain level of opponent. I think that certain level is Josh Parisian. And I just envisage maybe the early moments, the first, maybe minute and a half being a bit tentative. But once Harris starts feeling his way into the fight, I think the combinations will come fast, will come powerful, will come in volume. And I do think he'll get Parisian out of there. If he doesn't, then Parisian is that type of heavyweight that could probably take over once his opponent gasses, and will just grind it out to that close, ugly decision where it's going to be a split and we don't know which way it's going to go. But yeah, it's strange that a lot of money seems to have come in on Parisian. I think Harris, like I say, faster, more powerful, more explosive, better striker. And yeah, I think he gets him.
All right, agreed there once again. We'll move on to our next fight. So this is our co-main event of the evening. We've got Albert Duraev versus Jun-Young Park. Duraev 16-4-0. He's 34 years old, 5'11" with a 75-inch reach, trading out of Extreme Couture. Park 16-5-0. He's going to be 2 years younger at 32, 1 inch shorter, 2-inch reach disadvantage. I've got Korean top team. I couldn't tell based off of his Instagram where he's training. But why don't you start us off, Adam?
Yeah, Korean top team, I think, is where Jun-Young Park's at. As for Duraev, I don't think he's been at Extreme Couture, at least for not so long this camp. From what I've seen, he seemed to have been training, in the Russia or that sort of region. I don't know. But look, I think it's going to be, I think it's an interesting fight. I think it's going to be a close fight when you really break it down analytically from the different disciplines. You look at the striking. I think you've got a slightly cleaner striker in Jun-Young Park. I think Park's probably going to have the volume edge as well. But then I think Duraev, again, a bit like what I said with Chelsea Chandler, not pretty to watch striking, but it's just effective. What he does is just very effective. And because he has the wrestling in the back pocket as well, I think that allows him to come forwards with big, ugly, powered strikes, if that makes sense, just because his opponents will back up a little bit. And then the threat of the wrestling, they're going to have that in the back of the mind as well. And even look at the Chidi and Njokuani fight. I bet Chidi and Njokuani there. I think I had like 4.5 units on him at like minus 175, which proved to be a terrible bet in the end. We all make them. Nobody's immune from it. But he beat Chidi and Njokuani, and yes, he was very hesitant. You could tell that he didn't want to throw because of the threat of the takedown, but still he looked okay. So from a striking perspective, I think you've got weird effectiveness and power from Jorev versus, you know, the volume, softer, pitter-patter strike approach from Jung-Yong Park. Definitely a more relaxed approach. Then when you look at the grappling I think is going to be good on both sides. Again, I think whoever, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but whoever ends up on top is probably going to be able to control their opponent. I do think Jung-Yong Park is probably going to be able to get up a little bit more in the early moments, though, should he be taken down by Jorev. But then for me, I do think the decider in the fight, with the grappling quite close, with the striking quite close, I think it is going to come down to the wrestling. And although there's not a great edge there, my question is Jung-Yong Park a better wrestler than the Russian wrestler who does, of course, usually train at Extreme Couture? Is he a better wrestler than the Russian Albert Jorev? And I just don't think he is. I think if it does come down to a wrestling battle, I think Jorev will be a bit stronger. I think he's going to be a bit more physical. I think he's going to be, his wrestling technique, if you like, I think is going to be more solid and more sound. And I think that's going to be the moment that matters. But ultimately, I do think it's a relatively close fight. I've never massively been high on Jung-Yong Park. I think he's effective because of his wrestling. He's put a lot of hard work into his wrestling. You can see that. But I just don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if 3 years worth of wrestling is going to outweigh a lifetime of wrestling from a Russian in Albert Jorev. And I think that's going to matter in this fight. So yeah, I'm picking Albert Jorev to win the fight.
Once again, we agree. So I'm actually
just pick Jung-Yong Park off the top of your head now. Make an argument for Jung-Yong Park. Tell us why he's going to win, and we'll all believe you. And yeah, happy days.
I mean, there's an argument to be made, but the more I looked at it, like I see some people on Twitter so high on Park here, like they're throwing all kinds of money on him, and I don't really get it. Like he's good, but he's not like amazing at anything. He's a good boxer. He's got good boxing, but is he as dangerous of a striker as Chidi? No. I think even Roman Kopylov is a better striker than Jung-Yong Park, me personally. And Duraev was able to strike with him. He did get his eye closed up, just like the Buckley fight. But even Buckley, I also think he's a better striker than Park. So do I really see Park coming in here and just destroying Duraev on the feet? No, I really don't. I think on the feet it's super close. And do I see Park having any wrestling success against Duraev? Only if Duraev is tired. That's the only way I see it happening. I think that this is a lot of recency bias. I think people are looking at the Tiulin fight and the Joseph Holmes fight. Guys, Joseph Holmes isn't that good. Extremely green. The dude he has a ton of talent and he might be really good at some point. He's got the frame for it. But right now, Joseph Holmes isn't that good. And then Denise Tiulin, he's a good boxer, but he has no wrestling whatsoever. The takedown defense has been improving, but to submit him, also not super impressive to me. I don't think he's going to come out here and out-grapple Duraev. I don't think he's going to come out here and sub Duraev. And I don't think he's going to outstrike him either. So I have to play Duraev as a dog. At this point, I'm just sitting and waiting. Is there a concern with the cardio? To an extent, but like he looked fine to me in the third round of the Chidi fight. Granted, they weren't throwing a lot, but he was wrestling a ton, looked fine to me. In the Kopylov fight, he didn't get the fight he wanted. He didn't get a lot of takedowns like he'd be most comfortable with, but he was still able to strike. And in the third round, he was still there. So I just don't really see Park pulling this one off. I mean, I kind of get where people are coming from, but at the same time, not really. Like he didn't out-wrestle Greg Rodriguez, and that's because Greg Rodriguez is the better wrestler. He almost knocked him out. That was impressive. One of my favorite sequences, by the way, where he almost had Rodriguez knocked out and then Rodriguez just right back to him. That was crazy.
I bet Rodriguez there as well
So
at
did
around
I.
plus 110. I think I got plus money on him. So I was like, oh my God, no. Oh, fucking hell. Yes.
Rodriguez is one of the most stressful fighters to back because, like, skill-wise, I think the dude is incredible. He's got jiu-jitsu, grappling, striking, but he's such a dummy and he's got a rough chin. But for this fight, anyways, I just think that Duraev is the better man. The only way I see Park winning is if Duraev gasses, so I don't really get these odds. For some reason, money is still coming in on Park, so I'm just going to sit and wait. But I will more than likely have a bet on Duraev at some point.
I also think, just really quickly here, that I was expecting recency bias and market overcorrection on Albert Jorev as well, because like I say, I played Chidi and Jakuani as a a moderate favorite against Juryev, and with Juryev being what I saw anyway from MMA Twitter, I saw Juryev being a really popular underdog, and with him winning that fight, I did think that the line here was going to be so inflated on Juryev's side again because of that market overcorrection and the recency bias in it, but it just hasn't been for some reason. So that was something I was watching for when I saw the fight announced. I thought, okay, well, Juryev's going to open like minus 175, minus 180. They're gonna overcompensate for what they lost last time out, but they haven't. So yeah, it is a little bit surprising.
Yep, I agree. I had Duraev against Chidi, so I was pretty happy with that one. But honestly, I was surprised with how Chidi was fighting. I feel like if he came in how he looked previously, I feel like Duraev might not have won that one, but worked out. But we can move on to our main event that absolutely nobody asked for, and it's so crazy that in 2023 we really might end up with Holly Holm as a bantamweight champion at this point. Like, it's entirely possible, which is just insane. But here for our main event.
Don't pick Holly Holm to win this fight. Don't pick Holly Holm to win this fight.
I'm about to. So for this one, we've got Holly Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Holm 15-6-0, 41 years old, 5'8" with a 69-inch reach. Jackson Wink for her. Bueno Silva 10-2-1. She's 31 years old. She's going to be 10 years younger, 2 inches shorter, and have a 3-inch reach disadvantage. She's currently an American top team, from what I could tell. And I'll start us off. Like I said, I am picking Holly Holm. The line kind of ran away from me. I was looking at the minus 145. I was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? I wrote it down in my pad, and then I was going to do it, and the line was gone. So right now I'm going to sit and wait. I don't want to play her at minus 170. She is 41. She does seem to kind of be declining, but I think this matchup favors her. First of all, the 5 rounds. She's got 5-round experience. Mayra Bueno Silva can barely do 3. I have a hard time seeing how she'll do 5. There were similar concerns. People were saying similar things last week for Pantoja having never been 5. And, he looks pretty good to me. Won, became the champion. So maybe she's improved. Maybe she will be okay in the 4th and 5th. But from what I know and from what I've seen right now, I have to think that if we make it there, Holly Holm is going to have the edge. I think that Holly Holm is extremely physical. She's really strong. Her wrestling is very, very solid, and I think that's going to be a very clear path from her. I think she's going to go to the wrestling. She's going to work in the clinch. She's a great striker, but recently she's preferred to grapple, and I think that's going to be open for her. If not, if she chooses to strike, I think she can outstrike Mayra Bueno Silva as well. Silva, really big power. I'll give her that, but her hands are down most of the time, which is just going to let Holly Holm do her work and then get out of danger, which she can do. So unless Silva gets like a crazy knockout, which I don't really see, I don't think she's going to be better on the feet. And I guess the one concern I have, if Holly Holm does go with like a really wrestle-heavy game plan, Silva 7 submission wins. She can work off of her back, pull off those subs. But I really don't. I don't see it here. I just really don't. I think that Holly Holm's going to be too physical. She's going to have the better cardio, going to have the better wrestling, I'll say. And I think she'll have the better striking too, just maybe not the power. So for me, it's Holly Holm. Am I going to bet her at minus 170? No. But if the money comes back in on Mayra Bueno Silva again, yeah, I'll get to something on Holly Holm. And once FanDuel, BetRivers drop their stuff, I'll look at Holly Holm round 4, Holly Holm round 5, see if I can get something nuts there. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, my problem with this fight is, look, it's not the issue with the fight itself. Is, does it really need to be 5 rounds? Did they really need to make this a main event? Because the only reason why I can see the UFC justifying that is if they think or expect that Mayra Bueno Silva's going to win, so they want to give her that 5-round fight first before going into like a title shot or something. I don't know. But yeah, ultimately, like the dude says in the chat, death taxes, Holly Holm by decision is pretty much where I'm at. Look, we've got to disagree on something. So the only thing I could really pick out from that is I don't think Holly Holm's declining, which is very strange considering she's 41 years old. I don't think that we're seeing a really regressed version of her. The only fight where I feel that she did have not an off performance, but a performance where you'd have probably expected her to do a little bit better, was the Ketlin Verheide fight. I actually bet Ketlin Verheide there at like plus 225 or something.
It was that wide?
Pardon?
It was that wide of a line.
Yeah. It was either plus 200 or plus 225. I can't remember which line, but yeah, it was really that wide. And I genuinely thought she won. But anyway, look, Holly Holm, I don't think she's declining. I think she's still physically a beast. I think from a striking perspective, at range, Mayra Bueno Silva's I don't even think she's a better technical striker. She might just be faster and maybe look more effective. And if that's the case, and Holly Holm feels that she's being teed off on or whatever, I think Holly will just close the distance, get a hold of her, and just bully her inside the clinch. Really slow the fight down, win the seconds, win the minutes, win the rounds, that type of performance. If she takes it down, something you were saying, potential path to victory for Silva with a submission, but is Mayra Bueno Silva going to catch Holly Holm with an armbar or a triangle or something like that off her back at this level with Holm's experience? Again, I just do not see it at all. So yeah, I think it's a rough main event. I wouldn't say it's a rough fight. I don't hate the fight. I just hate the fact it's a main event. I think it's a rough main event. I think it could potentially be a rough fight for Mayra Bueno Silva, but then looking at Holly Holm, 41 years old, minus 180, again, probably going to a decision. So are you more likely to just want to play the goes to decision prop opposed to the money line? I don't know. I just think it's a strange fight all round, but yeah, my pick's Holly Holm to win.
All right. Agreement there once again. And yeah, that's 14.
Did we disagree on any? The only one I think we might have done is Evan Elder and Valdez. I can't remember what your official pick was. Although I know you bet Valdez, but
yeah, honestly, not even that one, because I do think Evan Elder probably wins. I just think it's mispriced. But yeah, that's pretty. I don't think I've ever had a guess where that happened. That's pretty.
Sorry,
great.
Guys.
Great minds think alike. Fools never differ. So we're one of those. But thank you guys all for tuning in, everybody watching. We got 21 live viewers in the chat right now. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you to Adam for coming on. Really appreciate it. I know you're a very busy man, so thanks for coming on and breaking down the fights with me. I'll let you plug yourself real quick, and then we'll hop off. Before that, I'll go first. In terms of content, so today, obviously, this will be out. And then tomorrow, I'm officially taking over Lou Betya's show on MMA Engine, doing props to consider and maybe bet. Nothing is going to change on that show other than the fact that I'm the host and not Lou. He went on a hiatus. We don't know when he's going to come back, if he's going to come back. But until then, I'll be running the show. We'll still be doing yam bags and all that fun stuff. I'll be joined by 138 MMA and Johnny K Picks tomorrow, so make sure to tune in. That'll be a good time. And then on Thursday, as always, me and MMA Propaholic on Twitter Spaces. We're going to do prop talk, just break down the card, but from a prop perspective rather than money lines and all that. So that's what I got going on. Make sure to follow, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and do the same for my guy Newsome over here. And why don't you plug yourself, and then we'll head on out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And first of all, Matt, like I say, thanks for having me on the show. Really do appreciate it. I'm a little bit disappointed you're not on a couch, though. Kind of expected you to be on a couch.
I've tried to figure out how to make that happen so many times, man. One day it's going to get done.
I kind of thought it was going to be purple as well. Just keep that in mind when you do buy your couch. But no, listen, I didn't come on the show to plug my stuff, my work, or anything like that. Look, if you want to follow me, the social media channel I'm most active on is Twitter, Newsome_MMA. Aside from that, I just came on for a good time, break some fights down, which I absolutely have done. I just wish we disagreed on a couple, though. Would have been nice to have a little bit of back and forth, but hey ho, that's the fight game. And look, to anybody listening, tuning in now or after once it's published, if you're betting against the bookies, I hope you crush it. Unless you're betting against my bets, then I hope you lose. And that's all from me. Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for coming on again. Thank you guys all again, and good luck this weekend, and peace out.